Hey guys, in today's video we're going to be working on something that you wouldn't normally think you need to do a video on, but it's about replacing a headlight bulb. We're working on this 2013 Chevrolet Avalanche LT, but it's going to be the same for the Suburban and the Tahoe as well from 07 to 14. And if we take a look at the passenger side, we can see if we manually turn the headlights on, we've got a low beam and we've got a high beam. But if we take a look at the driver's side, and we see over here we've got a high beam, but we've got no low beam. So the low beam bulb's burned out. So let's take a look at why this is hard enough that you need to do a video on how to do it. So your first go-to on how to do this might be the owner's manual. If we take a look at the one for this Avalanche and we go back to the index, we can see that if we take a look at the H section over here, there is a headlamp bulb replacement section, 1030. Looks encouraging. Let's check it out. We take a look at 1030. We can see, well, there's some information about headlight aiming, bulb replacement. Tells us to go to a couple of pages over to see the list. Talks to us about some warnings. Gets all into tail lamps and tail lights and license plate lamps. If we go to the next page, nothing about headlights. No, not even the type of bulb. What it does tell you, though, is if it's not listed, go to your dealer. Why do you have to go to the dealer to replace a headlight bulb? Well, let's look at that. All right, so let's upgrade from the owner's manual to the service manual, and let's see what the big deal is with this. So if we take a look at the headlamp bulb replacement section, not too big of a deal once you get the unit out. There's two bulbs. Low beam is the guy that's going to be sitting here, and the high beam is the guy that's sitting inboard here, and then of course you have some marker lamps, turn signals, and that sort of thing. So how do we get to this? Well, it tells us there's a different way to remove this for a number of different vehicles. For the one we're interested in is the Tahoe Avalanche Suburban. We're going to go to 229 here, and here we can see how to actually replace this. And now we can see why this is such a BFD. What they're going to want you to have to do is get rid of part of the bumper fascia in order to access this. So they tell you you're going to need to remove the screws in the wheelhouse liner. Open up the hood, remove the upper fascia bolts, remove the lower fascia bolts, loosen the two fascia defender bolts behind the liner, pull the outboard end of the fascia straight out until it disengages from the attachment bracket, pull the fascia forward and downward to allow enough clearance to remove the headlight assembly, which is this big guy here. Remove the upper headlamp bulbs. They don't mention there's also a third one right over here. They show it, but they don't mention it. And then you're going to grasp that headlamp in the upper inboard and lower outboard side and pull it forward to disengage the locating pins. Then you're going to pull the outboard side forward until the locating pin is disengaged, and then you're going to disconnect the harness. That sounds like a lot of stuff. Let me show you how you can skip some of these steps but still follow this. We're basically going to abbreviate this so that we can get enough access to remove this assembly. We'll still do it in a factory way without damaging anything, but we don't actually want to have to do enough work to remove this entire front fascia, and I don't think you need to, having taken a look at it. And then when we go to put it back together, we'll go reference these torque values. 53 inch-pounds on the headlamp bolts in both locations is what we'll use when we put it back together. So let's get started. All right, so we're going to start by the front wheel well on the driver's side. Everything I do on the driver's side, it'll be the mirror image for the passenger side. The first thing we're going to be after is there's a 7mm bolt here. There's a push pin here. There's another push pin here, and then another 7mm bolt here. So before we go after those, though, we're going to start the engine up and we're going to turn the wheel to the opposite side to give us some more clearance. All right, guys, take our 7mm. We'll start in the bottom one. We'll take the lower bolt out first. Then we'll go get this push pin. You can either try to get it from the outside or the inside. I prefer to get it from the outside so that we don't run the risk of scratching up any of the paint. Get this guy up here as well. Sometimes they can be stubborn, and you'll have to get them from underneath. Like this guy's going to be stubborn on us. There we go. And then we're going to get this last guy up here. With this out of the way, with the tire turned in, what we wanted to be able to do here is be able to get our hand in here to get a bolt that we'll come back to. Now, I want to actually maybe get a little bit more to film, so we're going to go a little bit further. I'm going to take this pin out here so that I can pull back this liner. These pins haven't been removed. It can be kind of stubborn to come out. Like this guy, he's definitely not happy about being disturbed after all these years. There we go. Lots of dirt and debris, so make sure you're watchful of that. Right. I think that'll be enough. We'll get a light in here and I'll be able to show you the bolt that we're going to have to go after on this side. All right, guys, I ended up taking this other 7mm bolt off down here in the bottom to get enough access to film. You might want to take it off yourself. Just to have more clearance. So we're going to show you the bolt that you have to go in and get that's on the headlight assembly itself. There's a 10 in here, 10mm. All right, so with that out of the way, we can peel this back, and if we come up down here from the bottom, I'll try not to block the camera view, but you can see right up on top here, right up on the very top here, there's a 10mm bolt. We're going to take that off. Now this piece of the headlight assembly is slotted, and you'd think that you could just loosen this. But I'm going to tell you, just like the service manual says, remove it all the way. This is a very brittle kind of plastic, and any kind of lateral movement, it's going to snap off. So just take the bolt off all the way. I can't show you that because I'm going to have to block your view to get in here with a 10mm ratchet, but let's go ahead and do that first and we'll come back. All right, after you get that bolt off, don't pull this, despite what you've seen in other videos. These later model ones don't have pull tabs here. And if you pull on it, you're going to break it. What you have to do is there's additional bolts holding the bottom fascia to the fender. So if we take a look with a mirror, what we can see in here is, you can see there's a couple of additional 10mm bolts here. Hopefully you guys can see that in the mirror. And we're going to have to go take 1 and 2. Those two 10mm bolts are going to have to come off, and then we can move the fascia. All right, guys, we're just about got this screw off. I'll show you the tool I'm using that's handy in these close quarters like this. You can get it off by finger now. So we just got a 10mm an extension, and we got one of these hand wheels to get it off so we can get it up in here. Yep, these are finger loose now. So here's the first one. All right, so that's what they look like. So that's the one closest to the front. And then this is the one closest to the back. All right, there's that one. Now with that out of the way, now there's a bracket in here. It may stay on or it may not. All right, this is what was attached with those two bolts that I showed you, and then attached with the 1/7 here that holds this to this. So that's the design that's used currently. And so now this is off. The older type used to pull and had some snap clips, but they almost always broke. So they went to this kind of a design. All right, so we're done on this side. Let's move up under the hood now. All right, guys, then we're going to come underneath, and we're after this 10mm bolt here holding the bottom part of the fascia mounting bracket. This one you're also going to remove completely. So I'll go ahead and take this off, and then we'll go back on top and we'll start getting the headlight assembly itself. All right, so now we're going to take these two 10mm bolts that are holding the upper grill part of the fascia out. There's one. Yeah, all this, guys, to change a bolt. Here's 2. But it doesn't take too long with the right tools. All right. So now this guy's all nice and loose. We just want it to be a little loose on this side here. Now let's go ahead and take the 10 millimeter that's holding the upper part of the headlamp assembly. This guy right here. And then we got one right here. I'll put these two bolts down below so they don't get lost. And with that, this guy, the only thing he's held on to are by these retaining clips that we were talking about before. Just want to make sure you don't lose this little guy here. Now, what we could do if we were worried about any kind of damage to the finish, we could put a piece of painter's tape. In fact, I think I'm going to do that right here. Even though this is an older truck, it's got its share of scratches. When we pull this out, it could make some new ones, and we don't want to do that because it's not our truck. So let me go grab a piece of painter's tape. We'll run it right along the bottom. All right, guys. I like this wide stuff for this kind of a job. Just want to work it in underneath. Yeah, it takes a little extra time, but that extra time is cheaper than trying to do touch-up. All right, so I'm just going to keep going around like that. I'll bring you guys back when I'm done. Now, if we can zoom in here, we can see there's that little bracket that went under that first 10 millimeter we took off. You know, we want to make sure we don't break that as we try to pull this guy out. And then we're going to be trying to make sure that we don't scratch up anything here. And you can see this guy's already obviously been removed before because one of these pins is missing. There should be a pin here just like the one down there. So you should end up having two pins. But it's just a matter of continuing to try and finagle it loose. So let me put you guys back on the other side. It's probably the better view as we try to wiggle this guy loose. All right. We're hung up on here is this little piece right there. There we go. All right. There's our bulbs. So we can, either unplug them all or just unplug this piece here, whatever we need to do. I'm going to go ahead and get a tool so I can remove this retainer so that we can disconnect the main harness here. All right, so you can use a pick. I'm going to use a small flathead screwdriver. We're just going to work this little safety clip off so that we can push down and remove the connector. You don't want to lose this, so put it somewhere where you're not going to lose it. Then we can get this guy the rest of the way off. There we go. All right, now we got him off. And you can see here inside, there's this little clip I was talking about, right? So you got a pin here, and you've got this piece here, and this snaps in right there. If we kind of zoom in, hopefully the light's good enough for you. It snaps in. That's what holds it on this side. And then what holds it on the other side is that bottom clip for that 10 millimeter that we took out here. Now you can see why I recommend taking the whole bolt off rather than just loosening it, so you have a lot of room to wiggle this loose. And then those two pins went in here and here. So that's what secures it. So let's go take a look and see about changing the bulb now. All right, guys, so we've got it sitting up on a towel here, the headlight assembly, and we're going to go after this burned out low beam bulbs. We're going to disconnect the wiring harness. I'm just going to work this guy off with a twist. And we're going to be replacing him with the same type, a GM 1350 3417. Right? So what you'll find in here is Philips is the OEM supplier to GM originally, and this is an H11LL type bulb. This one here is made in Germany. So now we're going to line up the large with the small into this indentation and give it a twist. Just make sure you don't touch the bulb, the glass, so that you don't have any problems. Then we're going to inspect the wiring harness to make sure there's no burns. And the reason I'm inspecting the wiring harness, let me go ahead and snap it back on, is that there was a service bulletin put out a while back on problems with low beam burnouts on these particular trucks, including this one we're working on now. And it's just to check for a condition that could cause the connector itself to melt like that, right? In which case you'd need to repair the connector. So whenever you have a low beam out on these, give it a check to make sure it's not suffering from this problem. That's not what we've got going on here. So we've got our bulb replaced. We won't install everything, but we'll hook it back up and we'll give it a test to make sure it's working. All right, let's go ahead and hook this up, test our work, make sure it's good. So we snap this wiring harness back on there. And I got the bulb on already inside, or rather I got the headlight on so we can see it's working fine. All right, so this is good. So now we just need to reverse what we did. So let's go ahead and get it reassembled. If we zoom in, now that we know that it's okay, we can put this safety clip back in. Just like that. Keeps it from accidentally becoming unplugged. All right, guys, we're going to come in with that bracket like that. Get it into position there. Keep holding the bumper down so you don't scratch anything. Get our bracket lined up where the 10 goes, the pins, snap it back in. All right, and then the first thing we're going to be doing is putting these 10s back up here. So I'm going to go ahead and get everything bolted back up, and I'll go over the final torque values. And guys, don't forget to reinstall these metal spacers if you have them. You should have them originally from the factory. All right, guys, as you redo the torque on the headlight bolts to the 53 inch-pounds we saw in the service manual before, you notice the outline of where the bolt was. That's called a witness mark. We want to get this guy pushed back in. Just kind of lean into it like that so that you get it back where it was. And that'll minimize having to worry about any kind of alignment situation. All right, going back to the service manual, guys, as we saw earlier, 53 inch-pounds on those 10 millimeter bolts that are holding the headlamp, both the two on the top and the one on the bottom bracket. And then if we flip back earlier in the manual for the wheelhouse liner, and it's the same on the left and the right hand side, those two 7 millimeter bolts are 18 inch-pounds. And then if we flip earlier, and we can see the front bumper fascia replacement. Now whether it's a Tahoe or an Avalanche, what we'll find is it's the same for all of them. So 62 inch-pounds would be the two bolts that are on the inner side, right? So here's number one, 62 inch-pounds. Here's number two, 89 inch-pounds. This is the bottom one on the lower side, the 10 millimeter on the bottom lower side. Number three is the top one, 53 inch-pounds, right? And so if we go up here and look, number one are those two inner ones that were on the inside bracket so that we could remove it from the wheel well area. Two is that one on the bottom. And then we look at the picture over here. Three are those two that we took off the top. And again, that's the same whether you've got an Avalanche, whether you've got a Tahoe, whether you've got a Suburban, whether you've got a Yukon, whether you've got a Z71 front fascia. Those numbers are the same. 62 inch-pounds for the number one, 89 inch-pounds for number two, and 53 inch-pounds for number three. You can see on the Yukon, same way, right? So all the ones this video covers are the same torque values. I hope that helps you out. It's a lot of work just to change a bulb, but it's what you have to do. If you got questions or comments on this procedure, I've abbreviated as much as I think you can. Go ahead and leave them below, and I'll try to help. If you found this video saved you some money, taught you how to do something you didn't know how to do, or just clued you into a better way to do it, I'd appreciate the paying it forward of hitting that like button. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.